take Brad's answer and just kind of finesse it a little bit. Um, a comparison would be looking at both the similarities and differences. Differentiation would be mostly uh, determining how they are different.
Great. Yeah. Bro.
I'm thinking that differentiation would be, we all have a different philosophy as to how to get to a point, and comparison would be to see how those points work together or separate.
Mm,
Just whatever comparing is, it would be, we all look at things differently or attempt to, and comparing them would be to see if how they work together or not.
nice. Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about, thank you for all these, is that differentiation almost allows for each of the two things to stand alone, and to have their own unique, positives and negatives. And then comparison is when you start to potentially diminish one by putting one thing above another. Or comparison can be something that potentially takes away value from one thing, or places a value system upon things in a way that differentiation doesn't necessarily do. Because we were talking about how most people seem to be not differentiating themselves from other people, but comparing themselves to other people. And when we compare ourselves to other people, the challenges that come with we therefore put ourselves above others in one way or another, diminish ourselves compared to other people. When we think about what we want to create, if we want to write something, say something, differentiating what we're doing from someone else, can strengthen what we're doing, as opposed to comparing ourselves to and what we want to say or do to someone else can actually potentially diminish ourselves. So, any thoughts on that interpretation? Okay, great. Well, with that, comparing and contrasting a little bit of this week's Torah portion and Purim, since we are celebrating Purim. One of the important four messages of Purim, and the four mitzvot, there's to have a meal, celebratory meal. Another thing we're supposed to do is send gifts to our friends. We're supposed to send gifts to the poor and support the poor, and we're supposed to read the Megillah, right? So the four elements of what we're supposed to do on Purim. So this is kind of our version of reading the Megillah, even though we're not reading the whole Megillah. Is comparing it. I thought it was interesting, and I have to admit, I've been playing around with AI a little lately and trying to understand like how to utilize it to its best, and not to minimize or take away from what I'm thinking, but how can it help increase the value of teaching and learning. So AI did help actually structure the source sheet for me today, which is really cool. Um, but this week's Torah portion is a big one. This is one of those famous ones. We had the Ten Commandments recently, and now we have the golden calf, the famous story of the golden calf. And how interesting that there is this alignment between the Torah portion of the golden calf and the story of Purim. So I thought we could look at that together. Uh, Let me get my source sheet up for all of you and make this full screen for myself. And I will put this also in the chat so you can take it with you in case we don't get to all of it. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay. There you have it for your own amusement later on. Okay. First thing I wanted us to think about um, is this idea of crisis and the threat of destruction, something that comes up in both the story of Purim and in this week's Torah portion. In this week's Torah portion, God said to Moses, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up from the land of Egypt have acted corruptly." Right? Again, Moses is up on the mountain, and God, quote unquote, sees what's going on and tells Moses, "Get down there. Those people are are acting corruptly. By the way, it says, whom you brought up, go down, for your people, whom you brought up from the land of Egypt, have acted corruptly. Very interesting use of language there. We may come back to that. So that's one thing. And then in Esther, it says, Haman, boo, said to King Ahasuerus, there's a certain people scattered and dispersed among the nations. It is not in the king's interest to tolerate them. Okay, remember, this is early on when Haman goes to King Ahasuerus. This is the setup to try and get rid of the Jewish people, and using some of the similar language that we don't have in this week's Torah portion per se, though there's this reference to Egypt here. But the first time that we learn about someone kind of assuming that we were the enemy and that we were going to be the downfall of all of humanity comes from the book of Exodus in the very beginning, when Pharaoh says there are these people who are growing more numerous, and we need to enslave them in order to put them at bay. And so we have similar language here that Haman is using to describe the Jewish people, same language that Pharaoh used when we were in Egypt. So curious, what are the similarities that exist between God's reaction to the golden calf and Haman's accusations? I answered some of it, but anything else? Can't see all. Ben, I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
The one that jumped out to me was you had these people in both of the scenarios who are challenging the norm, or even beyond that, a threat to the norm.
Okay, expand a little more on that. How is that? In what case? Kind of, do you see that in the Exodus passage? And
well, in the Pharaoh, these people are a threat. These people are a challenge to your leadership, a challenge to your status quo. And then when Haman, when he's talking to Ahasuerus, these people are going to destroy your realm. They're going to destroy your world. And for Moses, he's hearing that these people have kind of deviated from this true path. I mean, I think I'm reading a little bit more into it, but sort of how I see it.
Yeah, great. Okay, both of them are examples of threats to leadership, and threats, as you said, also to the status quo of the way things are and the structure that currently exists. And therefore, as we know, change is challenging and scary. And they seem to, both God and Haman seem to be digging into this idea of the fear that can come with change, and using fear as a motivator. Great. Penina.
The sentence "ומפוזר בין העמים" rose up to me. Scattered among the nations. And in other words, they see a people with no government of their own that are depending on them because they don't have a place, they don't have a country of their own. And because they are different, he thinks that it's a mitzvah to get rid of them just because they're different and they don't belong and they don't have a country of themselves. So, and when God is talking to Moses, you have to remember that there were many people who were not Hebrews that chose to go with Moses to leave Egypt and go to a new place which they knew nothing about. They really didn't know how it's going to work out for them, but they took a chance on him. It's better than being slaves. So the fact that they were not in their own place, they said you brought them out of Egypt, but nobody mentioned where they're going. So if you don't have a direction and a motive that is going to bring into a conviction who you are and what you want to do, you are in the mercy of the people around you who decides that you are homeless and there is nobody that will take care of you, and you are vulnerable, and therefore you are up for the taking. You are up for to be put to death and take away whatever it is that they own. That's what they did during the Inquisition. And that's
Okay,
what
great.
they did all over Europe during World War II.
Thank you.
People came back to their homes, and the people who occupied the home chased them away with guns, with rifles. They wouldn't give back the homes that they took from them when they went to the camps. So
Okay,
it's the same thing.
thank you. I want to go to another piece here. God said to Moses, "Go down, for your people whom you brought up from the land of Egypt have acted corruptly." What's God doing here? What strategy is God using in speaking to Moses to motivate Moses to go down to deal with these Jewish people? Yeah, Rebecca.
Oh, I'm just trying to compare the two words, tolerate and corruption. Basically, God is saying that this cannot be tolerated. So there's two instances of not being tolerated. So
Okay, you mean in the two passages, one from Exodus and then one from the story of
yeah, acting
Esther?
corruptly means, I mean, you're acting corruptly, you can't tolerate that. It's not tolerable.
Okay, great. So there's something that's happening that can't be left as it is and needs to be addressed.
Also,
right?
lack of unity.
Yeah. Okay, good. Brad.
Yeah, I think you're asking about God's rhetoric, how he's persuading Moses. And I think he's doing that by using the word your people, by putting the onus back on Moses, by using that word your.
Yeah, and do you think is that an appropriate strategy, Brad? Was that the right play from God's part to you think inspire Moses?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Does it backfire? Because Moses does react to it and engages God then. So is it effective? That's debatable.
Okay. Okay, great. Sydney, aka my mom.
Hi, Joel. Hello, everybody. I read this and to add on to what Brad is saying here, I mean, when I read this, this is a statement from God to Moses about leadership because people can't follow something they can't see. God is unseeable. Moses is a human being. Moses is a person to whom they can relate, and so therefore he becomes the symbol of what they can't see. At the same time, God is creating a partnership with a human being who is elevated above the rest of other human beings. So it's a very interesting dynamic that is created here and can ostensibly lead to a belief in God through Moses.
Nice. Thank you. Benjamin.
And just on this thing, God saying your people, well, isn't there a line where Moses says, let my people go to the Pharaoh? So he's already sort of Moses is taking ownership. They're my people. And God is just saying, hey, they're your people. Sort of fits.
Okay, great. Merle?
I think it's putting Moses in a leadership position. And wasn't Moses afraid of being a leader at one time? So I think that this is putting Moses in a leadership position to see how those people that are all together following react to that, or react to whatever, their reaction to however Moses reacts to being a leader.
Yeah. Yeah, early on, before Moses actually goes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go, as Benjamin referenced, that is when Moses says to God, when God approaches him through the burning bush on the mountain, Moses says, who am I? Like, really? You want me to do this? And God says, no, you are chosen to do this. And there are a few times throughout the journey where Moses says, really, I'm the one to lead this people. At one point he says, I'd rather you kill me than have to deal with these people. So, we've been fetchers for a long time. And yet what stands out to me here, what I'm stuck on is, just to show you the text one more time, right? And God said to Moses, go down, for your people, whom you brought from the land of Egypt, have acted corruptly. Isn't it God who took the people out of Egypt? Aren't we on a regular basis saying, thank you, God, for freeing us from the land of Egypt? Aren't we God's people? It's really interesting, and I can't tell if it's a brilliant strategy on God's part or if it's God trying to avert responsibility here, where instead of saying, go down to my people, whom I took out of Egypt, who are now disobeying me, who have gone against everything that I have just done for them, and you go down to them and take care of this on my behalf. So is God just not taking responsibility because they are an embarrassment? All right, is this a moment where God is thinking, oh my gosh, after all of that work, this is how they repay me? I don't want to take credit for that, because the people who are working for me, so to speak, are not doing what they're supposed to do. Or is it a brilliant psychological move to now empower Moses to take on this moment, and to, instead of seeing them not as his own, and instead to see them as God's children, for him to take this on, and for this to be his moment where he has to really earn, not only earn, he has to really declare the responsibility that he has to take to get out of this situation. So I'm torn. Part of me feels like this is God trying to get out of responsibility. And in another way, I think it's also kind of a brilliant leadership move on God's part to empower Moses, and that God is still kind of the leader here, empowering a new leader to come in and take responsibility for something. Any thoughts on either of those? No. All right, I know opinion you have thoughts, but let's keep going to the next section. Okay. Intercession and pleading for mercy. Okay, so we have, but Moses implored Adonai as God, saying, why, God, should your wrath flare up against your people? And in Esther, it says, then Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor in your eyes, O king, let my life be granted me as my petition and my people as my request. Okay, so two things. Now, Moses implored, if you think about what's happening here, Moses saying, really, please don't destroy these people. Why are you going to destroy them? Because God threatens to destroy them for what they're doing with this golden calf. And then we have Queen Esther saying, please, King, if you would, please, take care of my people. Don't destroy us. So compare Moshe's plea to God's with Esther's plea for Ahasuerus. How do their approaches differ? What's the difference between the ways in which these two characters, both Moses and Esther, are pleading with the authority figure here? And what does this teach us about leadership in times of crisis? Brad?
Well, I mean, I can't speak so much to Esther, but in terms of the Moses story, it seems to me there's more than a bit of irony here in that Moses is asking God to pull back and to show restraint, etc. And then what Moses does is, in a fit of anger, he throws down the stones. So it's a bit of the pot calling the kettle black in this story. And I don't know if there's anything like that in the Esther story, but there is definitely, it seems to me, some irony in the Moses story.
Yeah, great. Yes, by the way, it continues later on. I'll just, again, to share the screen so people can see the text, right? Moses here imploring God, please, please, should your wrath flare up against your people? Well, so God doesn't destroy them. Moses goes down, not only breaks those tablets, Brad, but afterwards makes the Israelites destroy the golden calf, grind it up, makes them drink it, and then has a bunch of Israelites go and kill many of the other Israelites who participated in the building of the golden calf, right? And so it's even more so, instead of God taking out God's wrath, it's Moses who comes down and brings wrath upon the people. In a part of the Torah portion that most people don't even know about because it's disturbing, and so we've kind of ignored it, but it is there. Other thoughts about these two passages, and the ways in which they plea with the authority figures, and what is this trying to teach us about in times of crisis, in times where we as individuals or as a society are dealing with real danger, or what is even perceived as danger. In this case, of course, it's real danger. How we're supposed to address that when we are not the ones in power. How are we supposed to think about that? I mean, we can think about that when we imagine what's happening in our world, when all of us as basic citizens may feel feelings about either what's happening in Israel, what's happening in this country, whatever, and we are not the authority figure, right? We are not the president, we're not the prime minister. What are we to do, right? And there are interesting things that seem to be being addressed in both the Torah portion and the book of Esther, about what is the language used, or what's the strategy we're supposed to use in order to try and accomplish our goals, or at least to be heard with our feelings. Any thoughts? Gary.
Hi. Seems like Moses is outraged. It's like, how could you do this to the U.S. Foreign Aid or Department of Education? And Esther is action. Look, I've done this for you. I need some help here. Here's a problem. So I'm going to be really upset about this and gnash my teeth. Why, God, have you done? How could you possibly do this? And Esther is, well, we've got a problem here. And what can we do? What can you do about this?
Okay, great. Also, I would add maybe into what Moses is doing in addition to that is not only his outrage, but it seems maybe that he's also trying to make a moral argument, trying to get to kind of the morality of God, of, these are your people. Like these are the people that you took out of Egypt. I mean, you have cared for them. Don't you feel a sense of responsibility for making sure that you don't destroy them after all that you've done in order to take them out of Egypt? Why would you then go and destroy them? I mean, you have a relationship with these people. Don't let this one thing get in the way of your longer term relationship and vision for the Jewish people, right? And as you're saying, Gary, I think really wonderfully is this idea of, okay, like there is kind of the political nature of, well, I've done something for you. I've been good. And now let's exchange favors. And this is something you can do for me, right? Which is also a strategy that also can be really important. Other thoughts on these two strategies? Karen. You're muted.
Got it, mute, got it. I'm sitting here listening, as I always do when you speak, and I am immediately traveling to what is going on in our world right now, obviously, which you are now bringing into the fore. I could associate this, if we want to talk about the Russians and Ukraine, we could talk about strictly Israel and Palestine, and the rulers, the leaders, and the negotiations, and the quid pro quos. And even our country is always in the middle. So we're playing the God, and we're not really God. Here we go. And it's who's going to win, who's going to listen. We have a long way to go. And here we are sitting here almost impotent, because our voices, except for voting occasionally, or groups or whatever, are talking to the people to represent our opinions, but virtually we are impotent in ability to make any impact on what is going on, because ultimately it's Netanyahu and it's all the affiliates, and then we have the Palestinians, and I listening to Trump, and he wants to transport everybody and get out of there, give them a place, don't give them a place. It's not a good idea. It is a good idea. But all of this, while I'm laughing, is really very serious, because we could end up in the Third World War, God forbid, in all these countries, while we are really not prepared for it either, and how we can quell. And we hope it's not a no-win situation, but that's where the brilliance of negotiations do have to be perpetuated. Sorry to take so long. Go on, please.
No, that's a great point. And you're this idea of us being impotent and not being able to do something. I mean, I think all of us feel that in ways in any of those different current events that you brought up. And I guess what the benefit of the two characters that we're reading about in the Torah portion in the book of Esther is that they have access to power, right? They still may feel like they have no power, but they have access to power. They have access to the authorities who have the ability to bring about change, right? And they use different strategies to try and bring out change amongst the leader, right? Whether it's to look to their heart and soul or their relationship with the people that they're ruling over, whether it's to come with anger about how dare you do this, or it's to do quid pro quos, or to really kind of use a more politically savvy relationship. But in all cases, what seems to be different about our situation, so to speak, and theirs is that they have direct access, and how more challenging it is when we don't have access to power, and the ways in which can we find ways to find access to power, right? Later on, Esther is told by Mordecai, maybe you were put on this earth just for this moment, right? This is your moment to use your access to power to make a difference. And so act, right? And so I think the question for us is, well, what kinds of power do we have access to, right? And we might not have access to the White House, but are there other types of power and authority that some of us maybe do have access to? And what does it mean for us to find that moment where we need to both figure out what strategy to use, but whether or not we want to put in our chips and cash in our relationship to power to try and do something. And that's really tricky because sometimes you only have one shot to cash in your chips. And there's a lot of challenges going on, and this is one moment in history. So how to really think about that, I'm not going to give the answer because I don't have it, but those are the things that I think we even should just be thinking about for ourselves about this. Karen, do you want to follow up on that?
I would just like to say, that we use the word impotent, I feel that because we have this, and I say relatively new in our country, where we have so much demonstration to work against as opposed for the positive, is where I say we have to do a better job with education, which I know you are doing. But I find that to be, it may not be in, so to speak, my lifetime, but whatever you do to educate the upcoming youth of today, and I will say that's your part, and even our university level, it is pathetic in not having educators who are able to teach critical thinking as opposed to a one-sided view and poisoning the minds. It is not to say that I'm necessary, and I don't mean me, I mean our people, that we are always right or this is the only way. But if you do not give a young person an opportunity to think, we're just doing the Peter principle, just keep passing them on, and we'll do this generation after generation, no matter how we settle, because we will settle, but how are we settling? Are we settling with a view of a future? Or are we settling for just an intermittent, position in our life where we've got peace just to quell our minds and our living, but it's really not a solution for a future of real peace. And that means we have to acquiesce as much as the other. And that's please.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Merle.
I think in all my years of Jewish communal service, the one thing I used to tell people when they were upset is that they had no power, so to speak. My comment, and it happened a few years ago, or within the last year with changes in different synagogues and stuff, I would tell people, go talk to those people that you don't love for whatever reason. And don't just pick up your toys and leave, but you have your power is your mouth. And you have to go in and make an appointment and talk to people, no matter who it is. Now our power is different. Some of it's our mouth, some of it's postcards, whatever we happen to be doing, we do have power. And I think people are afraid, and I don't want to say they're shy, but I think that they're afraid to use their power because they won't get the reaction that they're looking for. And that's very necessary. You can't just complain without making an effort to do something about it.
Right. Yeah, and we can't only complain when we have 100% certainty that things are going to go our way, right? I
Right.
mean, that's the other thing that you're kind of keying in on. We have to use our power, and we might not always, quote unquote, win, but that doesn't negate our responsibility to use our voice to go to speak to those who we have challenges with. Great. Brad, and then Penina.
Yeah, I guess I'm coming back to this idea of the power of the mouth, because what we're talking about here is rhetoric, and that's what you're asking us to do in comparing these different passages, analyzing which is more effective rhetorically. And the power of rhetoric can't be underestimated. And for centuries, rhetoric was taught. That was part of education, and it's not really taught anymore. The techniques of how to persuade, and you're bringing that right to the fore in asking us to compare these passages in which rhetoric is either used effectively or ineffectively.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly right. And you're right. It used to be taught, and gosh, we should really bring that back into the education system, right? I mean, because it's getting worse and worse, because now online people don't even write in complete sentences, let alone be able to articulate something that is cogent and powerful and can sway another, using either emotion, using relationship, right? All the things that, if we really want to get things done, it's not just using our voice and shouting, it's using our voice with strategy. And for us to be thinking about that and have the intentionality behind the use of our voice and our relationship to power in order to actually bring about change. Penina, and then
Okay.
Karen.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I think you cannot just ask people to do something without you giving them an alternative. I think that's why the voting system was developed. It's because you can't just tell somebody, go do it, and then he doesn't know how. So the idea that the person has the power to vote was born because somebody has to listen to those voices that otherwise wouldn't have been heard. So, and I want to give you an example. I'm not showing off. It just so happened that the president of Israel was in Cleveland, and he spoke at Bnei Yeshurun Temple, and my nephew was there. And on the way out, he was like talking to the people outside, and Micha, my nephew, great nephew, is showing me in video that he's talking to him. So in a joke, I said, tell him that he has to vote, that all the religious boys should go to the army. And Micha said, did you hear? And he goes, well, guess what? I don't know how long it took, but they are going to the army. There is a law now in Israel that they got to go to the army. I'm not going to say that it was because of me, but maybe I helped it a little bit, gave a little push that it's possible. And it happened. So I'm not taking a credit for it. I think there was in a position where they had to, otherwise they would go under, because there is strength in numbers. But I think sometimes people think, from a temple that somebody belongs to, it's not an Orthodox and it's not a Reform, what do you call it, conservative. But somebody from a conservative temple on Shabbos is going to, or Sunday it was, I don't know when was the rally there, said that should voice the thing that those guys should get off the books and get a Uzi
we all heard it here
and
first,
get
Penina.
going there and stop just, parading and yelling and screaming. And it happened. There is a law like this. So you have to voice, but you do have to give a chance to the people to decide also.
Yes.
So the voting system was amazing. That was born out of this whole thing. That's a good thing. That's all.
Yes. Yes. And we all heard it first. Penina is responsible for the Orthodox being enlisted. And it was that moment in time. But it is a great story. And it just goes to show.
I am telling you, I have it on video. He was talking to him and he says, Nina, look, I'm talking to him. He says, tell him that I gotta go to the army. And the guy, he went away and then whoops.
I think it's another good example of when we do potentially, even if it's for a second, have access to quote unquote power. How do we take full advantage of those moments that can come up where we really do potentially have access to something that we don't usually have access to? Those are moments for us not to shy away.
Open your mouth and say what you think in a nice way, or even in a joking way.
And this is what, as all Israelis have taught us, take advantage of the moment and say your mind.
And say something.
All right, thank you, Karen.
Sorry, I applaud you. Absolutely. I just want to say we have a juxtaposed position of speaking. I think we also need to learn to listen. Listening is a very important thing. And I remember there, Steve, may he, always come and teach us good things too. Our leader, say when we have a tongue, we have our teeth, and then we have our lips. And it is so important to listen as well as speaking. And I think our other, and then I'll again stop, is to say the more you teach what people can have as their tools to speak, the more people will speak up. Because when we just speak to speak, it may not do the job and we may be speaking incorrectly. So therefore, we need this educational tool that will give us the power to speak. And if they don't want to listen, then come back hopefully another time when they're not so irate, if you will. But we got to keep trying. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Yes. Yeah, we have to keep trying. And you're right. Education is key. I mean, and it's not just, it is for the next generation, but we all can benefit, right? We should all recognize how valuable it is for us to continually be learning. That's really the only way we grow. Okay, next thing. Divine hiddenness and revelation. So in this Torah portion, Moses says, please show me your glory, right? Show, I want to see you. And then in Megillat Esther, in the story of Esther, there is no mention of God at all. And as we see here, and also you may be aware or may not be aware, first of all, Esther's real name is Hadassah. It's good trivia to keep in mind that Esther is not her name. Esther is the name she goes by, and it comes from this idea of Hester, which is hiddenness, right? So what's hidden is not just Esther's identity and her real identity throughout most of the book. It's also that God is not mentioned at all. And so both the Torah portion this week and Esther, the book of Esther, kind of talk about this pleading of showing God, and how these also talk about, how do we respond in moments of hiddenness, where what we're looking for doesn't reveal itself, and how are we supposed to deal with that again when in these moments where we are looking for reassurance, or we're looking for leadership, or we're looking for X or Y and Z. Here we have two different moments, and we have the book of Esther primarily where God is not mentioned at all. Very kind of radical that you have a book that we read every single year that doesn't mention God when we have God playing a role in so many other places. What, by God being hidden, what does that seem to imply about us as humans, right? What is the implication that is made by God being the missing character, most specifically in the book of Esther, Merle?
that we have to take on the responsibility to use our resources. I mean, that goes back to making, if you're upset about something, make the effort and talk to whoever you're upset about why you're upset and get answers.
Good. Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's go to the, oh yeah, we're coming up. We have a little bit more time. Leadership and redemption. Maybe one more thing on hiddenness. I mean, I think this idea that we, as Merle was saying, have a responsibility to act. There's such a need for us, both collectively and I would say individually, to really think about how do we reveal that which is hidden. Benjamin was there last night. We had a men's gathering, a group to celebrate Purim and to talk about this idea of hiddenness. And people shared the things that were hidden about themselves that they wish they kind of could reveal more in the world or in their lives. And that when we think about what we learn from the book of Esther and the story of Purim, is that when you have the strength to reveal that which is hidden about yourself, that's when redemption can come. That's when things can change. The more we keep things hidden, the less likely we can bring about change personally or collectively. And you know, the idea of the masks that we wear on Purim is so fitting, because there are a lot of masks we wear, and there are a lot of things we hide behind. And the story of Purim seems to be suggesting that doesn't work for us. That is not the Jewish way to go through and bring about change and bring about hope for the Jewish people or for the world. You have to reveal the things that are hidden. You have to address them and deal with them. And when you do that, amazing things can happen. Okay. Leadership and redemption. So we have from this week's Torah portion: carve for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Remember, and by the way, nothing better than History of the World Part 1, where he comes down with 15, right? 3 slabs and then drops one. I always think about that. It's one of the best scenes ever. But here we have Moses carving the second set of tablets again, right? Because he smashed the first ones coming down the mountain after seeing the golden calf. And God is saying, okay, build a second one, create another one. And then we have in Purim, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews had hoped to rule over them, the situation was reversed, right? What is the significance of Moses bringing a second set of tablets after the sin of the golden calf? And how does Esther's orchestration of the Jews' victory compare? Thoughts on either one of those questions? What is the significance? Why does God have Moses create a second set of tablets? I mean, what's the value in this moment of, after anger and pain, Moses breaks those lessons? So why is God having him do that again, as opposed to maybe another way in which those lessons have already been, it's already in the Torah, all right? So we already have them from the first set. They've already been passed to Moses. He could just orally also, share them with the Jewish people. So what's the value of a quote unquote second set, Benjamin?
Well, I don't want to minimize it, but it seems kind of a do-over. You get another chance, and it seems
I don't
like
think I don't know if you're minimizing anything by saying that, by the way. I think that's actually a really significant lesson. So keep going.
Another chance. I guess there's faith that the Israelites will adopt those 10 commandments and live that life. And then for Esther, for the story of Purim, where the Jews are now kind of in charge, so they kind of have a second, I want to say second coming, a second chance, but they sort of get the one-upsmanship on the people that are trying to kill them. So it's a bit of a duality of this second opportunity.
Great. Yeah, I don't think you're minimizing it by saying, that he's given. There's actually, I think, two levels of what's of a second chance given here, maybe actually three. If you think about the characters in the story, we have God, we have Moses, and we have the Jewish people, and all of them are impacted by Moses's action in breaking the first set of tablets, right? Which is, this symbolic notion that everything that they've been working towards is gone. And yet, here we're learning that God is saying, you know what? Not only do you get a second chance by fixing what you broke, right? If we think about kids who break things or when they're old enough to know when they're breaking things, and they have to take responsibility for either putting it back together, fixing it, or purchasing it themselves for the second time around. So Moses is given the chance to fix what he literally broke. The Israelite people are given a second chance to be reminded about those messages from the Ten Commandments and to have them physically guiding them, and so that they don't get forgotten. And God also gets a second chance to redeem God's self, and to both reinstate his faith, God's faith in Moses, reinstate God's faith in the Jewish people, and to rebuild a relationship that I keep saying that God's relationship was kind of strained with the Jewish people. And here is this opportunity. So if we think about the Jewish concept of teshuvah, so this is a perfect example of how we can think about what it means to be given a second chance, to carve a second set of tablets, and how incredible it is a gift that we are given and that our tradition is upholding, which is take the opportunity to write your second set of tablets, right? Don't believe that one thing is broken and either you broke it or someone else broke it, that's the end, right? This is a really hopeful moment that it can be carved once again, and that we can be empowered to do that. So I think that's really, really important. And you're right, this for Esther and the Jewish people, slightly different, but this idea that you can go from being the victim to the savior, right? We don't have to perpetually be in the state of victimhood, and feel as though we are always subjugated, or that we are being ruled over. And again, I always like to think of it psychologically and emotionally, not just here in the historic or literary context, but what does it mean for us to feel that shift? I mean, those moments in our own lives where we felt like things weren't going our way, and then it's kind of turned around and we had the opportunity to do something that we didn't think we were otherwise able to do, or the things that have been holding us back, or the people who had been holding us back, finally are no longer an issue, and we have the opportunity to take control and to create the thing we wanted to create, or go where we wanted to go, whatever it may be. That's really inspiring. And we have this connection in the Torah portion and in Esther that we are not the perpetual victims, and that we are a powerful people, and we are powerful as individuals as well. Any other thoughts on that section? Go ahead, Penina. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Brief though, because I want to get to you and
Okay,
Terry,
I'm going to do it
and then-
very fast. Esther actually comes from the word Ishtar. They adopted names of Babylonian goddesses. And Mordechai was Marduk, which is another Persian god. To come back to the fact, the idea of identity, they were way into denying their identity. And so it took really, really a miracle, or all of a sudden an insight, to see if they're not going to do something about it, it's going to be a total disaster, physical to the people and spiritually to the leaders. So the minute that she said that she's Jewish, and so we started calling her Esther, and it shows transformation regarding the whole mindset of how they felt when they were in Persia. They had quite kind of like till Haman, kind of like freedom. And they chose to assimilate in order to feel safer. So the minute that she says that she's Esther and he says Mordechai, it's the word already tells you that there was a transformation, because it's no
Nice.
longer the names of Babylonian gods.
Great. Love that. Thank you. Karen.
Okay.
It's the hour, and I don't want to take it because I'll turn the whole thing around and we won't have time to discuss it. So, because I get into a philosophy and I get into a psychological dynamic, and I don't want to do that now. Okay, you've only got a minute.
Okay. All right. Well, when you said
But
turn
thank you.
it all around, I mean that is a very Purim-like reference, because again, there's this idea of flipping things around and turning things around. That is everything being upside down, and what was supposed to happen doesn't happen. So I think it's an appropriate way for us to end, which is on this Purim, and as we go into Shabbat. Let's again remember what these 4 messages and mitzvot of Purim are, which is to find a way to connect with the people we love, like having a meal, to connect to the broader community with our friends, to think about those who are in need with the Matanot Le'evionim, and for us to continue to tell our story, our personal story, our collective story, the story of the Jewish people, and for us to not remain hidden and to really think, what is the rhetoric we want to use so that we can move from feeling disempowered to powerful? And how do we use our voice, and when do we use our voice? And that we probably have more opportunities to step into this role, as Mordechai says to Esther, for this moment maybe you were created. That is a really incredible invitation that our tradition is giving to each one of us, to say that we are here to be able to do something really special. And that seems to be exactly what our tradition says each of us can do on a regular basis, if not at least one moment in our life, to really make a significant difference. So thank you all. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Beautiful.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Thank
Shalom.
you.
Bye.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Be
Bye
well,
bye,
everyone.
everybody.